that guard jumped out and guarded Joy very well. And I told Hunter, I said, yeah, you the second Val. Dougie will be the guy that's going to be sprinting to the corner. So T. Will delivered a hell of a pass on time, on target. And as you know, Hunter made an amazing shot. And when he left his hands, all I kept saying, please go in. Please go in.
And it did go in. That is Juwan Howard on mgoblue.com after the game yesterday. A thriller at the Crysler Center. And Howard's plea was answered with Hunter Dickinson cashing in that long three that got Michigan to overtime and then got him the victory, a much-needed victory. Welcome in a little bit late with some weather issues outside in Southeast Michigan, but we're good to go now, and we're pleased to have Trevor McHugh, the senior editor for the Maize and Blue Review, on for today's show. Trevor, thanks for your patience. How are you?
Good, and of course, Dennis, excited to talk to you, man.
Oh, yeah, there you are. There you are. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, good. I was going to say, after all that, no.
Well, the way things were going, it wouldn't surprise me if you were all froze up there, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know. Here we go. Did you watch the basketball game yesterday?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. Couldn't help it, man. Had, those last couple minutes, we're like, oh, know how this is going, right? We've seen this game a few times this year, and then, yeah, Hunter makes the shot, and the whole season changes, and very, very, very different conversation today, obviously.
You got that right. We'll, speaking of a conversation, we'll have one about what's going on with Michigan spring football. A lot of news with the coach talking late last week, but we are starting with this thriller with Michigan beating Wisconsin. That's the way it works in sports. During that game, there were a lot of people like, if we were sitting here and that shot was missed, it would be the season is over. Wow, Howard next year, he's going to be on the hot seat. Look at the recruit. Every single thing. And now a reprieve, and the sky is opened up, even though it doesn't look like that out here. And things look pretty bright here for Michigan basketball. That's what a W can do for you, huh?
Yeah, like I said, what a difference if that doesn't go in, right?
Oh.
I wrote, I hated calling that a must-win game because that's probably the third time I've called the game must-win this year, but that one really was. When you look at the projections and where Michigan was and where they would be versus where they are now after winning that game, we'd be talking Big Ten tournament win is the only way they're probably getting into the tournament. Now, there's still work to do, right? They're going to have to pick off one of these next two road games for sure, I would imagine. But hey, now we're talking about tied for second in a very, very weird Big Ten this year, right? And that's a big win because you make the buzzer beater, that's one thing, but then you go and command overtime the way they did. And just some of the things we've seen from the team in general. The guard play, obviously, with Kobe and Doug both playing really, really well. T. Will seems to be performing much better in his sixth man kind of role. So obviously you hope to get some minutes out of Jet moving forward, but you like where the team's at right now.
Yeah, you hit that the magic word about Jet. I wanted to ask you about Michigan gets to 17 wins. There's a lot of bracketology going on right now. You know that. If I told you that I thought Michigan was firmly on the bubble, like they get a win, they're going to be in, they get a loss, they're going to be out, they get a win, they're going to be in. They've got 2 games left in the regular season, Thursday at Illinois, Sunday at Indiana. The way that I look at it, Trevor, is that is the following. If they don't lose any of those, if they don't win any of those games, they're not getting in. They win one of those 3 and get 18 wins. I wouldn't feel good about putting my chips in on Michigan at that point. Now, they win 2 of 3. Let's say they won on Thursday and then, won their first game in the Big Ten, got them at 19. I think, you're going to be there selection Sunday. Lenardi is going to have Michigan on that first 4 out or last 4 in, one of those kind of things. You're just going to have to sit there and pray a little bit, but I feel, pretty good. I don't know if it's pretty good. In with a chance, I wrote there. And I think if they get 3 or more, they get to 20. That's going to be a magic number. You can feel pretty good about 2 weeks, a week from Sunday, which will be a selection Sunday.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. If you lose the next 2 games, for sure, like I said, you're going to need to win the Big Ten tournament. You get a quad 1 road win, whether it's Illinois or Indiana, then I think they're probably in that last 4 in, the play-in and Dayton or whatever. Yeah, I've been wasting time today looking at Ken Palm, looking at Torvik, wait for Lenardi, right? Very similar to last year, it feels like. But yeah, the Big Ten tournament win thing is where it gets interesting, though, because again, we're talking about they're tied for second right now. So if they get the super bye into the Big Ten tournament, they're not going to be able to reel off an easy win in the first couple of rounds because they're going to be, again, in the super bye. So depending on how the bracket lines up, they might be able to pick off a win there. But I think handle what you can control right now. Go win these 2 road games, right? I'm not as worried. Illinois is an interesting team. They're definitely not the same team they were with Kofi. I don't think they have a guy that can intimidate Hunter like they have in the past. You hope Terrence Shannon doesn't go off just so we don't have to talk about that, right? But I think that's a winnable game. And if the committee's sitting down and they're looking at what Michigan's done in the last few weeks, and again, you see that block M, they might be pushed a little bit, but the net scores up, the Ken Palm scores up, they're racking up some data. I'm with you, 19-20 for sure. You just want the record to look a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, it's no small thing that Michigan, you talked about their brand. Plus, you just look at this team, like their name recognition. Like you have Hunter Dickinson, whatever you think about him as a player or anything else, like he's been around a while. People know from the all over the country. They know who Hunter Dickinson is, and then the emergence of Kobe Buffkin and then Jet Howard being pretty much looked as a first round pick, maybe even a lottery pick in the draft. That gives Michigan 3 pretty big time names when you talk about name quality.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the knock on them, right? People are looking at the talent they have and saying, wait, why have you struggled? But obviously, I think a big piece of it was Doug McDaniel wasn't coming in expecting to be the starter, right? Hunter talked about this after the game, that's been the big change for them is this freshman got thrown into 35 minutes a night, something he was not anticipating. And at this point in his role and his growth and his development, I mean, he's ahead of Xavier Simpson as a freshman. That's for sure. Right. And obviously Kobe's play coming up. And yeah, if Jet comes on like, hey, this is actually a pretty talented roster, right? You bring in Jalen Llewellyn, he suffers the injury, and then just trying to find those extra guys, right? Jace gives you the minutes that he gives you. Baker's a guy that when he's on, you love getting those 3-point shots, right? But I think if they can settle in utilizing this Hunter and Terrace lineup, I don't know about you, but I am a massive fan of the 2 big man lineup. If they can utilize that better, get the big minutes from T. Will off the bench, continue to see that guard play improve, man, they could be a sneaky team. Again, you're playing your best basketball at the right time. Unfortunately, you still got to win some games to get into the tournament. But if they get in, I like how they're playing right now. I really do.
I like a lot of what you're saying, the different lineups, Terrace Reed. And then when you have, it just so happened that Terrence Williams II had the bruised knee, so you had a chance to get some different guys in there. Now you got Jet Howard injured, and Michigan has won these 3 in a row, and certainly 2 without Jet. And then there's, I was looking at the Maize and Blue review of the Den. I knew it was coming, and it's a fair question. Like, is Michigan better without Jet? The first thing you say is no. It's not gonna be, you're not better without somebody like this. But then you start thinking, well, can you play better potentially with him coming off the bench? And I've been thinking about this all weekend, even before actually yesterday's game. It wasn't that long ago that Kevin Durant played in Oklahoma City. And you remember that when they played there, and they had James Harden. And James Harden, they had James Harden who would come off the bench. He just didn't fit in with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, all 3 of those guys out there at once. So they went to the bench, and the Harden situation where he would just come in, and then everybody just knew. It was like, hey, Harden's just Mr. Offense, just like everybody crashed the boards. And it's kind of like when Jet's in there, he's just like, he's such an offensive threat, and he can do all of these things. He doesn't even need a whole lot of help. Just get him out there and let him fire away. I don't know if Juwan's thinking about that. I've been thinking about that. What do you think about it?
I like the idea, right? So they have played really good defensively, right? The biggest knock on Jet has been defense, right? The guy's an NBA scorer. He's a future lottery pick. Michigan is not better without him. They're not. Right? It's just not a smart thing to say. But yeah, you start to wonder about, do you mix up roles a little bit? It was something kind of similar. We've seen it in previous years too, with trying to figure out the Musa and Brandon Johns dynamic, right? It's not necessarily whether you start or not, it's the minutes, right? So if Jet's going to be able to give 20 or 25 minutes coming back from this injury, and he's coming off the bench as a scoring threat, because that's been the issue. There's not any bench scoring, right? So if you can run the starting lineup you've been running and Jet can still get 20, 25 minutes coming off the bench, and then, yeah, you play with the lineup throughout the game. It doesn't matter. Once the game starts, who cares who started, right? You play whatever lineup, you play whatever mix as well. It'd be interesting to see for sure. I think it would be good. You like what Doug, Kobe, and Hunter are doing right now, right? And it's only 2 games, so it's not like bringing Jet back's gonna ruin anything. And I promise you, those guys want Jet back on the floor. He sure looked like he's ready after he came marching down the sideline yesterday. He knew that shot from Hunter was going in as soon as it left his hand. I'm glad he did. I was nervous. But yeah, I'd like to see, especially coming back from the injury. We've seen how it benefited T. Will, right? Coming back here in that kind of role. It'd be interesting to see. And yeah, Michigan might stumble into something that works for him.
There you go. Buffkin on the screen, just putting Michigan up by 1 yesterday, 76-75. And, you know, you think about all the close games that they played this year, and we know. And so when you see them closing out a game, making all these plays, there was Buffkin making a big play, you know, and all of a sudden here they are getting a rebound that's tapped around and they fight for it. And Kobe Buffkin comes up with it. And then, you know, like it's a 1-point game. They need to get Hunter Dickinson the ball, and he needs to make the play. What does he do? Gets it, and boom, scores it. You know, there you go. Dickinson was pretty fired up. And then, you know, they still had some work to do. They came up, and it was Doug McDaniel who made the big play for him. So unusual if you've watched this team all year long, watching them make plays. But there's been some talk, and I was talking about it yesterday, that this team is a little reminiscent of last year's team. Late, it's coming together, and we don't know if they're going to get into the tournament. But last year at this time, we were thinking about, we don't know if they're going to get into the tournament. It ended up being a positive season for them.
It's got a very similar vibe to last year, doesn't it? Yeah. I noticed, like, even like I said, when I was digging through some of the metric stuff today, I was like, this feels a lot like last year. Yeah. Hunter, I've knocked him a few times this year for some effort things, where he didn't feel as into the game as maybe others. I always joked, I want the angry Hunter. I love when they play Maryland, right? And he's been more consistent, not necessarily in stats. He's always put up good stats. He's a good basketball player, right? But from a leadership standpoint, and just, I mean, I hate to talk about such an intangible thing, but just the way that the team was carrying itself, and him specifically, he had some fight yesterday, and he has the last few games, and you can see he's carrying himself a little bit different now, and more of that leader role, and getting the team rallying behind him. And yeah, if you can get rolling with the intangibles, and the whole team's in a good spirit, and you're playing lights out basketball, yeah, you know, come tournament time, if they get in and we like their draw, we could be talking about another Sweet 16 run, you know, and then we got to decide what looks like success for the Michigan program after another underwhelming regular season, where they've put themselves in a spot where, hey, don't lose to Central, right? Beat one of Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, one of those games that you lost by a combined, 10 points. Peel off one of those, and you're not worried. You know, you look at MSU and Michigan's resumes here. MSU's locked in like a 6 seed, and Michigan's fighting to get in, and it's really because of 1 or 2 games, right? So I like that they're playing their best ball at the end of the year, and they're coming together. They got to figure out a way to do it a little bit sooner, so they're not so stressed out every year. So I'm not so stressed out. They're probably fine, right? Yeah.
That's good. Well, this is it. We saw the Dickinson hook in overtime. We saw the Kobe Buffkin 3-point play that put them up. This was the play. They had to hit some free throws, but this is Doug McDaniel with the shot clock running down with a minute to play in overtime, driving the lane with 2 guys on him, making that play. You know, there are no bigger plays than that one right there. And Michigan goes on, and they're able to get the victory there. Woo! In exciting fashion. Now, Trevor, people have been asking a lot already about football. If you're looking over there at the comments, you're probably concentrating on what you're saying and everything else. We've got football coming up straight ahead. There's always football recruiting, always basketball recruiting, basketball talk, insiders, everything on the Maize and Blue Review all day, all night. So if you want to know all of that and the latest, you join the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. And you've got Trevor, who has made a nice spring ball hub with all of the stories. I was going through it today to help me out with what I was going to talk about today, and that is the cornerback position on Michigan. This was, I don't know, shocking, might be a little bit strong, when I saw this news. Amorion Walker. Jim Harbaugh was like, yeah, he's the starter at corner, opposite of Will Johnson, just a couple days into spring ball. It wasn't like we're going to wait and see. No, Amorion Walker. And then a little bit later on after that, I was like, oh, yeah, 6'3", 6'4". He's still going to play both ways, but, the guy just might be a unicorn. What did you make of Harbaugh saying that Amorion Walker was a starting corner for Michigan?
He's been a little bit more candid since last offseason with dropping names, something he did, he would give like the general praise to everybody, but kind of giving some depth chart information this early. It's like, whoa, really? Am I surprised Walker is getting that kind of praise though? No, I'm not. Harbaugh does use that term starter a little loosely too. If you racked up the amount of starters he mentioned on the offensive line, for instance, we've got 7 or 8 guys starting apparently. So, but I'm not terribly shocked. So Walker's one of those recruiting misses again, where the guy weighed 160 pounds and people just refused to look past that and see the skills that he had and the type of numbers he was putting up in terms of 40 times and vertical and things like that. But when you go to Bama's camp and they offer you on the spot and you're already a Notre Dame commit and Michigan's treating you like a 5-star, clearly you're a top recruit, right? So I think a lot of people are still kind of hung up on that because they saw this middling 3-star recruit and they're like, whoa, this guy's already starting CB2. What? Yeah. So he's probably going to play 6'3", 180, 185 now. Right. He's got just absurd length, which makes him a deep threat receiving threat for sure. That's kind of where everybody saw him, was he was going to be maybe what we thought Andrell Anthony was going to be. Right. And then I thought, well, maybe with the crowded wide receiver room and maybe some depth need at cornerback, we'll see this experiment. What I was most shocked by from the Harbaugh comment wasn't him calling him a starter and giving him that level of praise. He's not even playing wide receiver. It's not an experiment. He's a corner. So what Harbaugh said is he could earn the ability to be a 2-way athlete and potentially play some wide receiver, but experiment over. Amorion Walker's a cornerback, right? That was kind of surprising to me, is that's how comfortable they feel with him already. And Harbaugh's got some history with a 6'3" guy receiver converting over to corner, a guy named Richard Sherman. So I can't shake that comparison. That's who I think of. And like I think it was with you, or maybe it was on one of our other podcasts, I said maybe the biggest fan of Amorion Walker is Will Johnson. So if Will Johnson's out there saying, yeah, this is the dude I want to cross for me, well, between Harbaugh and Will, those are 2 guys I'm willing to trust.
Yeah, I like when I hear coaches call players unicorns. That's high praise. And you just look and you know what Will Johnson brings to the table. We saw that. Sainra still proven, and now Walker in there. A little bit of surprise when I was going through all the names. I was typing through them, because I like Miles Pollard. I mentioned him just the one play that I saw him in the spring game when he was down with Will Johnson on the goal line. I thought he looked really natural, looked like a professional corner. I was like, I like that guy. And then I'm like, okay, McMurrows, I know them. And here's the 2 freshmen. Oh, yeah, Keyshawn Harris. I'm like, wait a second, who's Keyshawn Bennett? Keyshawn Harris. He's a grad student. And, Harbaugh throwing his name into the mix there. So there's always a little bit of a former walk-on that he has in the mix, giving him some love in the spring, at least a name to keep an eye on, along with the other half dozen there after all those starters.
And there's more too. German Green, Jamon's brother. I'm not sure if he'll settle in at safety or corner or not, but he's a guy worth watching, because when you're dealing with what you have here is Michigan's got plenty of talent. Just none of these guys have played a lot, right? Harris might have the most snaps out of everybody, but in terms of meaningful snaps, there's not a lot of experience, right? So even a guy like Cam Calhoun, a freshman who's come in and played really well, could earn some reps earlier or earn more, reps throughout the season going on. So it's a situation where talent could win out, but a guy like Harris, who's been through multiple off seasons and multiple camps, could be good enough to start or get a lot of reps early in the season while these talented players come on further as the season goes on. So that's why a guy like that's going to get named, because he's been around the team long enough that, is he a high ceiling player? No, but can he go out there and do the job for Michigan while they're maybe developing some of these other dudes? For sure. I thought Walker might be the favorite coming into the year. I mean, at this point, you have to say he's the favorite after what Jim Harbaugh said. But yeah, I mean, the guy's he is a unicorn. He's an absolute freak, crazy length. And the reason he can play corner at that height, and the unicorn part of it, is his body control. He can get really good pad level and get really good low to the ground. A lot of the tall guys, when they play corner, get a little too vertical. They can't bend their knees and hips as well as they need to play corner. There's some clips around of Walker doing some corner drills. He looks really, really good. So if you're a situation where his speed and his agility gets him to keep up with a receiver and you're going to throw a jump ball his way, I'm going to take Walker's side in a lot of those jump balls.
Yeah, I saw that 3-cone video, and that was eye-popping for sure. You ready to answer some questions to the best of your ability? I see some that have come through.
Always. Let's do it.
AJ, does Trevor know anything what Kirk Campbell will do with JJ? And what does he do differently? Hopefully he can get JJ's mechanics better and have him throw with anticipation.
Sure. So, Antoine, good to see a question from you as always, obviously. Kirk Campbell was working with JJ a lot last season. Big part of the reason he got this job to begin with. The players like him. JJ likes him. He was arguably JJ's choice from the get-go to be QB coach. So there's not a lot of change going to be needed to happen there. That relationship's well established. In terms of mechanics, JJ works with a guy named Tom House, QB guru. Right. He helped him out last year coming back from his injury. I don't know how much could potentially change with a full off season of being healthy. There are a couple things I think JJ could work on, but nothing drastic. I don't think I've seen this conversation a lot. I don't think it's as bad as some folks are saying, yeah, we saw the anticipation issue against TCU, right? It's a matter of making those early reads before the corner jumps and some things like that. And that just comes with experience 100%. So I like the Kurt JJ combination. And yeah, I think JJ is going to improve just because he's got a full off season and he's going to be, fingers crossed, he's going to be healthy all year. So
yeah, he threw the 2 pick sixes. People are going to be a little fired up about that. You get that. But if you want to feel good, go back and watch the Ohio State game. Yeah, I know we were talking about a lot of different things with the passing, being able to downfield and all that, but then he put it all together in the most important game when he had to, which bodes well for him. The follow-up is about Sharon Moore. He'll be at the controls now as OC. Do you think he plans to be more aggressive passing the ball?
I mean, if I want to risk being wrong, I'll say yes. Every year we say Michigan's going to pass the ball more, and I just don't think they are. The passing games can be really interesting because we don't really have a passing game coordinator for the first time under Harbaugh, whether it was literally the offensive coordinator like we saw with Gaddis and, Weiss, or whether it was a guy like Jed Fish or Pep Hamilton. We've always had kind of a passing dedicated guy on staff, and they really don't right now. Everybody geared towards the run game, and that's what's been successful for them. I do think what I thought was going to happen last year should happen this year, which is more of like a West Coast system. They're not going to be throwing a bunch of deep balls. I still think they're going to take their shots when they're there. But when you see you've got Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, Barner, some of these guys, I'd like to see them utilize the short passing game more to replace some of the runs. But if you think after back-to-back Big Ten championships, Michigan's going to start chucking the ball around instead of running it, no, I think the offensive identity is probably going to stay pretty similar this year. If anything, they might be running the ball more, but letting JJ run. So we'll have to see. As the games start playing, maybe what happens on the field is different than what they anticipate, but I just don't see this offensive identity changing much.
Yeah, the success that they've had, if they had not had that success, I think I'd be sitting around here saying, they should throw more screens. They should throw more slants. They should throw the ball more. JJ should run more. But it's hard to argue with the success that they've had, sitting around here saying, throw the ball more, throw more screens. And, Jim's like, do you like winning? I think, is what he's saying. Here's another one for Trevor. The O-line we have and the running backs you have. Do you see Jim giving the keys to JJ? Oh, this is the same thing, more the same physical, also known as win, baby, win. Yeah, that was the same thing. The coach, this was talked about last week, about the possibility of running out 2 offensive line groups and pounding teams into submission.
That's a deep group, isn't it? I mean, you could arguably take what's going to end up being Michigan's second unit, and it would probably be the 3rd, 4th best offensive line in the Big Ten. Like, that's how loaded this offensive line is, which is pretty incredible because we thought there'd be a crazy bunch of change heading into this year. But now with Keegan and Zinter both coming back, Barnhart and Jones both coming back so far, and then adding the transfers they've added. Yeah, it's a ridiculous group. I don't know if they're going to maybe rotate guys a little bit and rest them a little bit. That tends to not be an offensive line thing. They've been able to pound people into submission in the 4th quarter anyway. Props to Ben Herbert. We've been hearing that like crazy. Just the strength and conditioning Michigan's had the last few seasons has just been massive. So, the combination of Sharon Moore and then that strength and conditioning has really made an offensive line that can wear dudes down. What I think will be good is, hey, we don't got to run guys out that are a little banged up. Right. We've got multiple players now that can step in and be starter. So they're going to be able to keep the team healthy throughout the year would be my hope with that kind of depth.
Well, what about JP asking you about guitars, acoustic or electric?
How does he know I play? That's interesting.
I don't know. Do you talk about it on Twitter?
Yeah, here you go. There's my black Strat right there.
Wow.
So, yeah. I have acoustic. I like acoustic. I lean towards electric though. Yeah.
You must talk about it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know until today when you talked about your guitars that you were a guitar enthusiast. So, but I don't sit on every tweet, but I look at Twitter.
You need to learn more about me, Dennis.
Antoine's asking about recruiting, and it would be remiss if we didn't ask you about recruiting. Let's see how Antoine's putting it. What does Trevor think about battling and beating Ohio State out of the recruiting trail? Lots of battles between Ohio and Michigan. And will we get the running back from Ohio? I think Zach Marshall is the running back from Ohio that he is talking about from Cincinnati.
Jordan. Zach Marshall is our tight end.
Jordan Marshall. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Look, if you beat Ohio State on the field, you're going to have better chances in recruiting, right? At some point, the winning will redeem itself. Michigan has been going back into Ohio the last 2 recruiting cycles and recruiting better there. I think anybody who's been around for a while, Dennis, you and I know, you start talking about some of the best teams in Michigan history, there's a lot of Ohio guys on those teams, tend to be, right? So I love seeing them go into the state and recruit. You hope they're going to start winning some of those the bigger battles, right? It's hardly the first top running back recruit though. Like over the years, Donovan Edwards was one, right? Mike Weber was another one. Kareem Walker didn't really go our way, right? Yeah. But that's happened for a long time. So I think Michigan's in a really good position with a lot of these guys because, again, especially a running back, you would hope if you've seen what Michigan's doing, you want to be a part of this, right? It just seems logical. Ohio State's going to dominate wide receiver recruiting. Can't say enough about the job Brian Hartline's done. But look, Michigan's beating them on the field by significant amounts. They are the team to beat in the Big Ten now. They've shown it wasn't a one-year fluke and that this is the program now, and they hope to keep it going. So, yeah, I'd like to see some wins start to come in. Look, the recruiting class is off to a good start. But, yeah, if you start stealing guys that Ohio State really wanted, now you're winning all over the place, and you're really turning the tide. And this rivalry seems to go in decades, right? It's hardly other than the 10-year war, it's hardly a back and forth kind of thing. One team tends to hold the keys for a while. Michigan's got them right now. We'll see if they can really drag this into a decade type level of dominance like we saw in the 90s.
I like how you're talking. All right, we'll have 3 questions for you, and then that'll do it. OT is talking OTs. He's talking tackles. He's seen tapes of Ladarius Henderson at guard and left tackle. He looked good at guard. but I don't see Henderson as a starting left tackle at Michigan. Why do you see Henderson as a starting left tackle?
Sure. I think he has the length, literally just, arm length and ability to get wide, and the athletic ability to play the spot. He's not in camp. That wasn't something, I guess I didn't realize he wasn't going to be a part of spring camp and that he was going to be coming in the summer. I think that's an interesting wrinkle in the whole thing. Could Trevor Keegan potentially move to left tackle and Henderson play left guard? Maybe. I did an article recently talking about, hey, if I find my top 5 best offensive linemen versus maybe some position bias, what do I get left with? And what you get left with is 4 guards and a center. So it'll be interesting. But the team early on, when Henderson was brought on, there were some comments made to us that they saw him as a tackle. With Keegan and Zinter both back, that just was kind of my logical conclusion that he was going to slide to left tackle. He's a NFL level prospect, so he's obviously got the ability. Now, whether he can get in, sorry, kids at the door, whether he can get in and get, formulated with everything and take on the left tackle spot, I don't know. Jeffrey Percy is a guy on roster who's been developing the last few years and started last year. He's going to have to fight him for that. And then maybe Carson Barnhart or Trent Jones slides over to left tackle. I don't think so. They're both more geared towards the run side than they are pass protection. So I think they're better on the right side, but honestly, just kind of default selection. I think Henderson's going to be the left tackle, but I've started to doubt it now that he's not showing up to the summer. That's going to make things interesting.
Now, Trevor, you seem like you can talk about all the positions on the field and even off the field and recruiting and everything else, but there's a little special gleam in your eye or whatever, a little jump in your step when you start talking about the offensive line. I've noticed that. So we got 2 more questions for you. Ringo says he's curious to get your thoughts on Michigan's NIL strategy. Seems like we've kept guys around much longer than most. Maybe they've been more forward-thinking than we've given them credit for.
So anybody who's heard me talk about this before already knows I've been a fan of Michigan's strategy and saying exactly that I do think they've been forward-thinking and that just jumping into the Wild West scenario, it was not a sustainable model. Just from a standpoint of, if I'm a booster or whatever I am trying to throw money into this football program that I support, I don't know that paying money for a 4-star or even a 5-star high school recruit is the best investment because they don't always pan out, right? And it's happened very quickly. And we're seeing big time programs like Ohio State saying, look, we're not doing this pay for play thing. And even Notre Dame, who was the hero of last summer, saying, we're not going to pay you just to come here, right? Whether it was Ohio State, what happened with Quinn Ewers and paying him the NIL money and then he bailed after a year to go back to Texas anyway, or even a guy like JSN who was healthy enough to play and just didn't, right? Something's leaving a sour taste in folks' mouth. Now, the NCAA is at least pretending they're going to start taking this seriously. I was borderline disgusted to see their first infraction they went after was the 2 twin girls that play for Miami's basketball team, their women's basketball team. I mean, that's almost making a mockery of the entire situation because they had dinner with John Ruiz. No evidence whatsoever that he actually had any NIL involvement. They're doing just fine without him. Meanwhile, Ruiz is doing all these shady things behind the scenes, but NCAA is ready to go, right? So those are the 2 things I think you have to separate. The NCAA's level of, I don't know, actual policing of this versus what the right sustainable thing is. And now we've seen it in practice. The NIL pay for play schools have mass exodus and transfer portals, and they have a 500 or worse record on the field. Michigan was able to keep Blake Corum, Trevor Keegan, Zach Zinter, right? These guys came back. Mike Sainer still there's 7 or 8 of them, right?
Chris Jenkins, yeah, right. A lot of
right. So these Cornelius Johnson, I mean, we're talking about guys that could have gone to the NFL who have now come back because they've earned NIL, name, image, and likeness. They've been here. They've established it. They've earned it. Michigan's taking care of them. I think that's going to be the path. Also, the transfer portal, right? You don't get the guys you got in the transfer portal without having some sort of NIL system in place that at least makes you an attractive option for guys like that. So I just think more and more of these kids are going to find out, A, the money's not there because the program's not offering it, or B, the program's offering the money, don't have it either, right? We've seen a couple of those, and it's worse than we even know. I can tell you, I've talked to some folks. What's happening with some of these pre-NIL pay-for-play deals is worse than we even know. But a lot of these deals aren't legal, so the players can't come out and say what's happening to them because they're just throwing themselves under the bus, right? So it's going to filter out. I think it's going to police itself. I do think there's going to be some legislation that makes things interesting, blah, blah, blah. But without getting in the mud, Michigan's recruiting is starting to turn around again. We're seeing it with 24 and 25. And I think using NIL to reward the players that have been here, which is what the whole point of it was supposed to be, is the right strategy. Whether a revenue share can come into this or not, that's going to be the legislation piece. You look at this massive TV contract. Can the players get a piece of that? That'll be a game changer for Michigan potentially. But right now, I know it's frustrating to see what's happening, but law of averages, it's going to come down, and it's coming down fast already. So
you've done a nice job there talking about the NLI. You could take a long time explaining it. You did a nice job. And if they can get Jaden Davis here sooner rather than later, I think people start feeling a lot better about Michigan all over the place with how things are going. Here's the final question for Trevor McHugh, and it comes in from Todd. He asks if we think Michigan can win the Big Ten basketball tournament and versus the games that they have on the road here this week at Illinois Thursday and at Indiana on Sunday. All right, McHugh, how about you start with those road games, and you can skip ahead to the Big Ten tournament, handicap it for us. What do you think?
I think they can win one of two. Winning back-to-back road would be difficult. I like the Illinois matchup, like I said, because they've been kind of an inconsistent team this year as well, and they don't have Kofi anymore. Kofi was a guy that was just frankly a really difficult matchup for us. Playing at Indiana is always difficult, but Michigan looked like they should have beat Indiana once, right? I know that was at home, but they've shown they can do it. But man, TJD is a ridiculously good basketball player, right? That might be one of the best players in the country, if not the best player in the country. So I think that road game against Indiana might be really difficult. If I had to choose the one right now, I think I prefer the Illinois game, but I mean, hey, they're both probably going to come in with 30 or 40% chances of winning or whatever the metrics say. And hey, if they show up like they have been and maybe a healthy Jet contributes some minutes, I like their chances. As far as the Big Ten tournament, it really just depends on the draw. One, getting the Super Bye is going to be a huge help because you don't have to win as many games. And then two, are you playing Northwestern? Or when are you playing Purdue? That kind of thing. Could they get on a run? Absolutely. I don't want to have to bank on it. I don't want to have to win the Big Ten tournament to get in because I wouldn't bet on it. But could they? Absolutely. We've seen it in the past. Michigan goes on runs. They start playing at the end of the year and something clicks. So I wouldn't be shocked either way.
Yeah, I think they need to get the game against Illinois, and I think they can. I think Indiana, like you mentioned, I watched them go to West Lafayette over the weekend and beat Purdue. I think the Hoosiers are the best team in the Big Ten. I think the Hoosiers will win the Big Ten tournament. I think the Hoosiers will go the farthest in the NCAA tournament as it sits right now. Not just Trace Jackson Davis, but Hood Schifino now. This guy is the freshman of the year. He is awesome. I like all the way across the board with Mike Woodson's team. I think the Hoosiers are the best team in the Big Ten. So that's going to be a hornet's nest and a very tough one to win. But could I see Michigan somehow? I know that they're not playing on Wednesday, but they could be playing on Thursday. They could get the Super Bye, as Trevor says. I mean, for everything. If I was going to start going through the tiebreakers and everything else, I just decided, let me just wait and see what happens on Thursday. And then at least when you come down with one game to go, you can start talking about some tiebreakers. But they need to get to 19 or 20, and they're sitting here at 17. So that's how I've been looking at it. And if they put themselves in position to make March exciting, especially in the early going here. And the further you go now, the more wins, the more exciting it's going to be for the Maize and Blue. Trevor, thanks so much for staying around. We only went 40 minutes, but actually we went over an hour. We were waiting around for them to hook up the power here at the Peach Mountain Studios, and I'm surprised actually that it stayed on the whole way. So here we are.
Always love talking to you, Dennis. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Take care, Trevor. There he is, Trevor McHugh.